Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Just a reminder, if you could please keep your video off, that would be great. Thank you so much for coming to our first ever virtual story slam. My name is Stacy, and I'm a bookseller and the events coordinator at Belmont Books. Belmont Books, for those of you who are not familiar with us, is an independent and locally owned bookstore in Belmont, Massachusetts. Again, if I could please ask you to make sure that your video is turned off, that would be great. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that we have a number of virtual events coming up, including a panel on women in horror on Tuesday night. You can register for this and our other events on our website, which is belmontbooks.com, and that's where you can also purchase books by Steve and our guest judges. As a special incentive, if you order 3 or more of these or any books by October 31st, you will receive 20% off. For storytellers, when it is your turn, I will turn your audio and video on, so don't worry about that. We're very excited to welcome back Steve Almond as our MC. I'd like to tell you a little bit about him, and then I will turn the event over to him. Steve Almond is the author of 11 books of fiction and nonfiction, including the New York Times bestsellers Candy Freak and Against Football. His most recent books, excuse me, are Bad Stories and William Stoner and the Battle for the Inner Life. William Stoner is about reading and writing and the struggle to pay attention to our lives, which I think is something that we can all relate to right now. For 4 years, Steve hosted the New York Times Dear Sugar podcast with his friend Cheryl Strayed. His short stories have been anthologized widely in the Best American Short Stories, the Pushcart Prize, Best American Erotica, and Best American Mystery Series. He also publishes crazy DIY books such as Letters from People Who Hate Me, as well as teaching private writing workshops and editing manuscripts. Just a reminder, I'm so sorry, that the theme for tonight's story slam is Hexed. And without further ado, I will turn the event over to Steve, who will also introduce our esteemed judges. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Stacy. Thanks to Belmont Books. And I'm so glad people are joining. We were like, okay, 50 or so people signed up. Let's hope like almost all of them show up. And you guys did. So thank you. Good on you. Let's see, there's only a couple of ground rules. The first is if you can mute yourself unless you're one of the judges or a storyteller. And please, if you're not familiar with Zoom, and I think most of us are like painfully familiar with Zoom at this point, but could you do speaker view? Or that's going to be how you'll, I think, enjoy the evening the most if you do speaker view. And that's in your sort of upper right-hand corner. It gives you the option. You can do the giant Brady Bunch view, which is not going to be very interesting. But I would recommend the speaker view so that when our storytellers do their thing, you will be watching a human being in a box, but still just that human being, and you won't be checking out anybody else's bookshelves or staring at your own beautiful reflection in the screen. So mute is on and speaker view if you can. And the other thing that would be super awesome is if you could, in the chat, if you enjoyed a story, or even if you just felt like I was on board and felt carried away, like let people know in the chat, let the storytellers know what you thought of the story. And it's just a kindness, since we don't want to have everybody unmuted and have kind of raucous discord, but that's a nice personal way of kind of letting people know that you picked up what they were putting down. So we're going to do 7 stories this evening. They'll be roughly 5 minutes in length. And it's on the theme of hexed, and that can be however you define hexed. We are certainly not going to be sticklers about that. We have 3 just awesome judges who I'm going to now introduce and read their bios, which is really formal, but hopefully you will get to know them better as the evening rolls on. And if the judges could give a little wave, that would be great, so people know who you are, but we'll figure it out soon enough. Virginia Pye's collection, Shelf Life of Happiness, won the 2019 IPPY Gold Medal Award for short fiction. Her 2 historical novels set in China, River of Dust and Dreams of the Red Phoenix, also won literary awards. She's taught writing at NYU, UPenn, and most recently at our very own Grub Street. Jenny grew up in Belmont and has lived in Hartford, New York City, Philadelphia, and Richmond, Virginia, before returning to Cambridge 5 years ago. Please welcome the wonderful Jenny Pye. Awesome. Rachel Barenbaum. Rachel Barenbaum's debut novel is A Bend in the Stars. I can tell you that the first two paragraphs of this novel are absolutely astonishing. And you go ahead, and I'll just remind you if you want to mute yourself, just so we can't hear any background. In the era of Tubin, you really want to make sure that you're muting and hiding your camera, so we're not seeing anything we shouldn't see. All right, Rachel, I want to just start from the top with Rachel. Rachel Barenbaum's debut novel is A Bend in the Stars. It's been named a New York Times Summer Reading Selection and a Barnes & Noble Discover Great New Writers selection. It is also a Boston Globe bestseller. Rachel's second novel, Atomic Anna, is forthcoming from Grand Central in 2022. Wow, that is weird to look at. 2022, very sci-fi feeling. Rachel is a prolific, absolutely prolific writer and reviewer for the LA Review of Books, the Tel Aviv Review of Books, and Dead Darling. She's also an honorary research associate at the Hadassah Brandeis Institute and a graduate of Grub Streets. You're seeing a theme developing here, Grub Streets Novel Incubator, and she's the founder of Debut Spotlight and the debut editor at A Mighty Blaze. In a former life, she was a hedge fund manager and a spin instructor, so bend your mind around that combo. She has degrees from Harvard in business and literature and philosophy, and she lives in Brookline, Massachusetts. If you are not too intimidated, please give it up for Rachel. And our final judge is Randy Susan Meyers. She describes herself as a Brooklyn-Boston mix who believes happiness requires family, friends, books, and an occasional New York bagel. She lives in Boston with her husband, where she teaches writing seminars at Boston's, wait for it, Grub Street Writers Center and Northampton's Writers in Progress. Meyer's most recent novel, Wasted, tackles the personal and political body image and fat shaming. Parade Magazine, Pop Sugar, BookBub, Women.com, Get Literary, and Brit.com chose Wasted as a top 2019 summer read. 3 of Meyer's novels were chosen as a must-read book by the Massachusetts Council of the Book, an affiliate of the Library of Congress, writing, quote, "The clear and distinctive voice of Randy Susan Meyers will have you enraptured and wanting more." Please welcome the enrapturing Randy Susan Meyers. And we will hear from all of these wonderful judges when the time comes to judge the storytellers, which brings us to the storytellers. I am going utterly at random and a little bit putting people on the spot, but please, storytellers, everybody is on your side. Everybody is listening eagerly. And the most important thing you can do is just try to enjoy yourself and give yourself over to the story. If you feel nervous, you can always say, "Oh, I'm feeling nervous." Everybody's rooting for you. It's a very friendly crowd, I promise you. All right, our first storyteller for the evening, please welcome the very brave Carol Orange.
Okay, I'm first. Wow. Okay, I will start reading. It's called Hexed by an Ancient Curse. Years ago, my best friend Lois and I participated in an ayahuasca ceremony at a Peruvian jungle camp. On that steamy July night, the sky carpeted with stars, we sat cross-legged on mats in a round thatched hut.
I thought she was
Candles burned in the open windows while 2 shamans, one middle-aged and one much older, chanted as we drank from a thimbleful of a hallucinogenic drug we'd never heard of before. We'd been reassured by our experienced leaders on this sacred journey that this spiritual experience would cleanse us of toxins from our past. After drinking my allotted sips, I lay down on a mat next to Lois. The shamans worked the room, interspersing chants with inhalations from their pipes. Each of Don Miguel's chants was answered by a refrain from Don Pedro, who sat cross-legged across the room. Their a cappella ping-pong reverberated in my head, its repetition recalling the incessant beat of Ravel's Bolero. This drug's not so frightening, I thought, until ragged bands of colors, bright orange turning into blue, then purple and pink, flailed around me. Auras floated above people's head. One of the South African women in our group stood up, her flowing blonde hair now surrounded by an ethereal light. Transformed into a pre-Raphaelite beauty, she seemed to float about the room. After I whispered about this apparition to Lois, a series of shockwaves convulsed inside my stomach. I must have looked at her with fear in my eyes because she held my hands tight for several minutes until my body returned to normal. I watched Don Pedro inch over from his mat to fondle Lois's right foot, thinking the elder shaman turned out to be a lecherous creep. I tried shooing him away. He ignored me and began.
Show my picture.
I'm sorry. He began. I'm sorry. He began. I tried showing him. He ignored me and began sucking on Lois's bared stomach. I pulled on his arm. "Commando de parada," I said. Lois put her hand on mine to stop me. "He's healing an ancient curse." What? I was incredulous that she had allowed this guy to be so intimate. "He's giving you love bites." "He reminds me of my father," she whispered, and I knew she was totally into it. "You're on your own," I said, miffed that Lois had rebuffed my offer of protection. The hickeys rising on her stomach didn't seem to bother her, so I lay down on my mat, waiting for the hallucinogenic to wear off. At 2 a.m., the group leader said that our bodies were free of the potion and we could leave. Lois and I walked back to our hut using flashlights to find our way along the dirt path. She told me, Don Pedro said, her father had passed on his ancient curse of an acidic stomach. I had never heard her complain about stomach aches before. Perhaps those symptoms lay dormant inside her. After brushing our teeth, we reclined on our cots under white mosquito netting, making us look like mysterious brides. I couldn't fall asleep, wondering why the ayahuasca hadn't revealed anything helpful about my past. I felt Lois's hand poke through the netting and tap my arm. She asked me to join her at the hut's flimsy porch, where we noticed the fading stars. The air was fetid, the night was still, except for the howler monkeys screeching in the trees. Lois surprised me when she said, "I envied you when your dad took you horseback riding." I never knew she envied me as a child or realized her father had not taken her anywhere by herself. I thought our early bond came from being daddy's girls and our family's eldest child. "No one understands me as well as you," she said. "The same," I responded. Ayahuasca night brought our devotion home. Going through the hallucinogenic experience, talking about our fathers while we bunked in the Amazon jungle deepened our friendship. When we returned to New York, Lois went to an internist. Tests revealed an ulcer. I was wrong about Don Pedro, I admitted. "You wanted to protect me," she said.
Awesome. Fantastic. What an amazing story. Thank you, Carol. That was remarkable. What a set of images, man. Those howler monkeys. I love that image of these mysterious brides, everybody in their mosquito netting. And of course, my personal favorite moment is when your friend said, "He reminds me of my dad," and then you write, "She was totally into it." Now we know we are really beyond ayahuasca in terms of the weirdness of this particular story. What an awesome story. Thank you for sharing it. We're going to go to the judges and see what they thought. But before we do that, I just want to say a quick sort of shout out and thanks to people who were essentially forced to get a copy of my book, Bad Stories. It was foisted upon you with the agreement that maybe in exchange for that painful reading experience, you would donate a little something to a candidate or cause that you support. And people really did that, which is great. I just got a bunch of notes in the chat. Stephen donated to Autism Speaks. Marcy donated to Act Blue, as I've been doing almost compulsively these days. Maggie gave to Mass Audubon, and Jennifer donated to Belmont Books, Read It Forward, that program, which is so awesome. And Alexis donated to Detention Watch Network on Act Blue. And I might read a few others. Andrea gave to Rosie's Place. I think it's such a nice thing to sort of publicly let people know what candidates or causes or local organizations you support. It's a way of feeling a little bit less helpless in this time where a lot of us, like me, are kind of stuck doom scrolling. And that can feel very isolating till you remember a lot of other citizens of good faith are also kind of putting their money where their mouths are. All right, let's go to our fantastic judges and see what they thought. I will add the caveat: the judges are gonna give scores from 1 to 10, and it's a weird thing just inherently to judge stories. What will stay with me is not the score that somebody gets, but the beautiful images and insights that Carol offered us. Nonetheless, as this being America, there's some unwritten rule that we do have to judge every single thing. So let's go to our judges and see what they thought of the story. I'll start with Ginny Pye. What did you think? I know you are a veteran of ayahuasca. So what did you think of?
Absolutely.
It's
absolutely.
Almost a daily thing with you, I believe.
Yeah, all the time. Carol, I thought that was terrific and very brave of you. And you did it succinctly. You told a really good anecdote, a good story, and lots of good details. I could see the ethereal friend, and I love the line, he's giving me love bites, when really they're hickeys, and we know where it leads. So I really enjoyed that, and I'm giving it a 9.
9.
Woo!
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
Well done.
I'll
Great
remind
start the evening.
That's great. And I'll just remind people, if you want to include a little note, even publicly, I think it would be fine. Doesn't have to be privately, just to let the storytellers know that we're here and felt what they did. It's kind of a brave thing, even virtually, maybe even especially virtually, not being in a room, to kind of lay your story before people. So please give them some love. Thank you, Ginny. That was awesome. What do you think, Randy?
Well, I think that Carol brought me right back to a time in my life when I was very close with the Grateful Dead. I thank you for that, Carol. I mean, actually, you put me in touch, which is incredible. When you put somebody in touch emotionally, you're doing your job. And so I too have been hexed by genetics. So when you mentioned that thing about being hexed by her father, as you put it so poetically, and all I could think about is, oh my God, I have my grandmother's arthritis. I am hexed. So when you describe the feelings of what happens after they took that magic elixir, I have to say, I felt a certain amount of attachment. I'm not sure why, but I did. So great job, and so brave. Oh my God. Performing is so hard. So with great happiness, I give Carol an 8.5.
8.5. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, there you go. 8.5. Okay. Yeah, we could sort of see it. Yeah.
I'm not lying.
No, I see it. It's an 8.5. Maybe a note, which is don't mess with Randy. Just we can see it. It's good. 8.5. Awesome. Rachel, what did you think?
Carol, thank you so much for sharing. So brave going first. And I got to say, I mean, I loved it. I was there with you with the auras, from the beginning. I was hearing the music, seeing the colors. I thought that was great. You just pulled me right in. And that's kind of the hardest part of storytelling, is pulling your reader or your listener in. So I thought you really did a fantastic job there. And sucking out a curse. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. How else are you going to get rid of a curse, right? So the other thing I love is the question of friendships. I'm always fascinated with friendships. Can you help a friend who doesn't want to be helped, or does she want help? right? That's a big question that seemed to be at the middle of your story. So I loved it, Carol. I'm giving you you can't see it because I'm on the Saturday Night Live set. I'm giving you a 9. There it is.
9. Awesome. All right.
Yes.
Fabulous. Okay.
Thank you.
Good scores. Fantastic. All right. Let's keep it going. Awesome. Let me see. Our next storyteller, I apologize in advance for screwing up everybody's pronunciation. Nonetheless, I will do that. Our next storyteller is Sara Sweet Rabidoux-Kelsey, and I probably got the 3rd part of your name wrong, but I got the other 3 right. So please welcome Sara, and let's hear her story. Here she is. Awesome.
The prom is unbearably hot, and it smells like chlorine because the banquet room at the Sheraton Commander is attached to the indoor pool. I have a giant knot in my stomach. It's 1986, and I'm a freshman at the senior prom. But it's awkward because my boyfriend, Paul, who asked me to the prom, is here with his ex-girlfriend, Laura, and I am here with someone I hardly know. I am in love with Paul. He's like Jake Ryan if Jake Ryan were a sweat hog. Like, he's this handsome varsity athlete, but he drives a shitbox Chevy Nova and has a waterbed. To be fair, at 15, I probably shouldn't be dating an 18-year-old with a waterbed, but I am helpless against the irresistibility of being liked by an older boy. But because it's the 80s and I've been invited to the prom, I have to buy a dress. So I have to come clean to my mom that I've been dating an older guy for 5 months because she's the one who's going to buy me the dress. Now, my mom is very scary and mean, but somehow agrees to take me prom dress shopping. I don't tell her about the waterbed. Now, I'm not really a girly girl, even though I'm
Sara, you muted yourself, Sara.
How did I do it? I'm not even touching it.
You were just,
no.
It's okay. You were just saying you're not really a girly girl. And then you
Okay.
went quiet. Okay.
Just back up to there. Yeah.
You're doing awesome.
Yeah, it's terrific.
I don't know how that happened.
No worries. You're not a girly girl.
I'm not really a girly girl. Because even though I'm still in Girl Scouts and I've never dreamed of proms or dresses, but somehow being invited to the senior prom has flicked a switch in my head. And now, instead of planning the best routes on which to sell my Girl Scout cookies, I am planning with Paul on matching his bow tie and cummerbund to my dress. This is the stuff Judy Blume's dreams are made of. So after about 1 million dresses, my mom and I don't really see eye to eye in the fashion realm. We agree on the Jessica McClintock seafoam green strapless dress, and she puts it on her charge card. On the way home, I wonder if maybe I'll dye my shoes like they do in the magazines. But a few days before the prom, as Paul is driving me home from school, he tells me he's got some bad news, that he can't take me to the prom anymore because Laura, his ex, has threatened to kill herself if he doesn't bring her to their senior prom. He says he's sorry, but it's a tough situation. Now, my worldview is based largely on episodes of Miami Vice and The Muppet Show. I'm not really sure how to react. I mean, I should be mad, right? But I'm still somehow so under the spell of his manliness that I accept this information without complaint and make out with him. At home, when I need to explain the tough situation to my mom, it's terrifying and I burst into tears. Now, if this weren't 1986, my mom might have picked up the phone and called a teacher or parent or someone that would check on Laura. But it is 1986, and she just put a $200 prom dress on her charge card. So she tells me, "You're going to that prom if I have to take you there myself." She's mad. My mom's intense and intensely tells me that Watson's does not allow the return of prom dresses and that I had better think of a solution quick. Desperate and without a lot of time, I call Paul and beg him, tell him he's got to help me get a date, which I know will be difficult because now it's Friday and the prom is tomorrow. But Paul finds a guy named Tom. I mean, he is a senior at our high school, but I have never met or spoken with him. In fact, the only thing I know about Tom is that he's from Wellfleet, and everyone knows people from Wellfleet are weirdos. But what's a girl to do? Tom shows up at my house with a yellow corsage. It does not go with seafoam green. Plus, it's not a wrist corsage. It's one of those that are meant to be pinned to the top shoulder of your dress. And my dress is strapless. So we pin it to my waist. And although I've never been to a prom, I know this looks ridiculous. I sulk at the table all night long. Tom asks me to dance. I say my back hurts. He brings me a Coke. I say I'm not thirsty. The knot in my stomach is seaworthy. I can't keep my eyes off Paul and Laura. When they get up to dance, I notice his bow tie and cummerbund are pink. They match Laura's dress perfectly. The longest sentence I say to Tom all night is, please bring me home. Tom walks me to my door and gives me a kiss on the cheek I do not expect. And it's in this moment I realize I have done the same thing to Tom that Paul has done to me. I've used him to keep someone from being angry with me and completely disregarded his feelings. And I wish I could explain this to him and that he would understand and that everything would be okay. But I'm 15. So I mumble another thank you and go inside. And I know, however humiliated and cursed and embarrassed I felt at the Sheraton Commander, that Tom must have felt 1,000 times worse. So Tom, if you're out there, thank you for bringing me to that prom, because if you hadn't, my mom definitely would have.
Awesome.
Thank you.
What a story. That's fantastic. Oh my God. I am overwhelmed with prom anxiety. It's such a beautifully told story. Never, just as a storyteller, as a writer, never mistrust the declarative sentence. It's just so a winning declarative sentence, something like, for instance, my mom is very scary and mean. It's just powerfully effective. I'm so impressed with the whole thing. I love that line about the knot in my stomach is seaworthy. I love when somebody finds an old worn out piece of language and somehow just tweaks it so that it becomes this like startlingly new thing. Beautiful. Such a great line. And that also just the longest sentence that I spoke to Tom all night was please bring me home. Amazing. And James Kilpatrick, part of the reason that I muted, not to single you out, but part of the reason that I mistakenly muted our amazing storyteller was because you are not muted. And I was afraid you were going to like step on her story. So everybody please mute who isn't the storyteller so I never have to mistakenly mute another amazing storyteller again. Can we make that little faith promise? Final thing I'll say, Sara, before we go to the judges, every story that's any good has to move from describing the world to the central danger, which is self-revelation. I'm so pleased that this story in its final moments turns the camera back on you or holds up a mirror and says, oh my God, I did the exact thing that was done to me by this 18-year-old with a waterbed. I was the one who, and I just love that moment of reckoning. It totally delivered it for me. All right, judges, what have you to say about this remarkable revisitation of the prom? Let's start with Randy. What'd you think? Just unmute yourself.
Mute. I thought it was fabulous. I myself didn't go to a prom. I was too cool to go to a prom. So I am very grateful now that I have never gone to a prom. This was a visit to a really scary, scary place. you never painted yourself as a victim, which is one of the most successful ways to get people really into your story. When something horrible has happened to you, but you don't paint yourself as a victim, that is fabulous. As Steve said, the descriptions of your mother were right on point. The waterbed, you had me at the waterbed. Oh my God, who hasn't done something stupid for a waterbed? It's amazing.
We're on a waterbed, yeah.
And most of all, you really surprised me with this. She threatened to kill herself. And I really love that because it's such a, I've worked with batterers for 10 years, and it is such a common theme of that people use to get their way. I'm going to kill myself, but you got to take it seriously. Well done, very well done, and very brave. And I gave you a 9.2.
Oh, fantastic. Awesome. Great. Rachel, what say you?
Sara, you also had me at waterbed and prom. I'm a sucker for all the prom stories and prom movies. I think it's super fun. And poor Tom, I just felt so bad for him. And I loved how you came around, like Steve said at the end. The one thing that you did exceptionally well, which is very hard to do, is you brought in actual names, right? Labels. So you talked about Jessica McClintock, Seafoam Green, right? So it's very hard to bring in something like that. And yet that was the perfect moment to bring in a description like that. A Jessica McClintock Seafoam Green. I mean, I know that with the dyed shoes. So I just thought that was so, so well done. And you did it again with Miami Vice and the Muppets. And so many authors just fall flat when they try to bring in name brands or, you know, stuff like that. So you did that super well. And poor Tom, and I'm giving you a 9.25.
Wow, 9.25. Now we're going to the second decimal point. I would figure that it's all those Harvard degrees. You know, she was always eventually going to get to that third decimal, but it's going to get interesting. It's going to get interesting to see how far out she goes. All right, let's keep an eye on that as the evening progresses. Ginny, what did you think?
Wow, I love hearing oops, can you hear me? I loved hearing what you said, Steve, and the other judges, and I agree with everything that you all have said. I also really appreciated, Sara, your presentation. I couldn't quite tell if you had memorized this, if you were just, you know, saying it, speaking it, or what, but you did a really nice job with that. So, and the language, I also, as Steve mentioned, really like the simplicity of the language in certain moments. That wonderful sentence, please bring me home, just the clarity of it, but also some of the poetry too. I love the line, the knot in my stomach is seaworthy. So you also threw in some interesting little asides that I'd love to talk to you about someday, about Wellfleet, among other things. And the other references to that time period, as Rachel said, were really spot on. You know, you really captured the Miami Vice, the Muppets, the Jessica McClintock, and also just that whole experience of proms, which I guess could happen in every era, but somehow you managed to grab it for that, that time period. And mostly you really captured what it's like to be a girl and a ninth grader, essentially. The irresistible attraction of an older guy. You nailed it. And all of the unwise choices we make, all the dumb situations we get ourselves into, that tight place we can get into with our mothers about that, how you can make your mother do something like buy a $200 dress and then have it fall through, and you know you just make a mess wherever you go at that age as a girl trying that hard, and you really captured that. And I think that's a really worthy thing to write about. So that's great, and I really enjoyed it. 9.3.
9.3, fantastic.
All right, I haven't gotten to 2 decimal points yet, so.
Eventually you'll get there. I know, we're going to build towards it, but an awesome story. Let's keep it going. And again, I'll just remind people, if you can make sure that your microphone is on mute. James, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be harsh, but I just want to make sure that the storytellers can really, you know, get through their story. It's hard enough for them to, you know, tell a story and then to also kind of hear an interruption can sort of knock them off balance a little bit. So if you guys can mute, that would be great, and be on speaker view. Let's go to our third storyteller. I know him. I love his stories. Let's welcome Steve, or Stephen Brykman.
Hi, how are you? So thanks, Steve, for having me for this. This is great, and I can't wait to read your book. This story is called Coming Into Money. I had to run upstairs to get the phone and then stand there talking, tethered to the wall, because this was back when voices weren't just things that were free to float around willy-nilly in the air. They had to pass through wires. They had to be connected to the wall. Hello, I said breathlessly. Stephen? Soledad? I said, fingering my pockets for an inhaler. What are you doing right now? She asked. Talking to you, I said. This was my stock high school answer to an innocent question, a way to sound clever when the truth of it was I was never doing much of anything. She said, want to do more than talk? I told myself I was hearing things, but my crotch took the bait. Without proof of subtext, my penis had pictured a scant-clad Soledad, the curly-Q phone cord dangling from her mouth, her pink tongue feeling out the rubber. Soledad was tall and Chilean and a couple years older, but in terms of raw physicality, she was on a whole other level. When she walked, you could practically hear the tom-toms. It was a curse. The woman couldn't so much as walk down the street without some fool honking. And best of all, she was my bass player's sister. I saw her for the first time a couple months ago when she emerged from her bedroom in a diaphanous nightie, angelic and unannounced, her breasts levitating. Take a picture, why don't you? She said and slammed the door. She had a similar effect on our guitar player, Chris Neff. But unlike me, Neff was man enough to do something about it. Not surprising since he was taller and fixed his own car. But lately, things between Neff and Sol had gotten shaky. The two of them had been fighting inexhaustibly, so when it came right down to it, everything was pretty much up in the air. What about Neff? I said. Can we just not talk about him? She asked. It was a pivotal moment. The fate of our unknown punk band hung in the balance, not to mention the risk of personal bodily harm. Because the fact remained, the nerds I hung out with were all literally afraid of Neff, deathly afraid, for a myriad of reasons, the most convincing of which involved a lighter, an ice pick, and a can of Aquanet. Him who? I said. Pick me up in 20, she said. I ran downstairs to borrow the keys from my dad. What if I need to go out? My dad said. I'll be stuck here. You're going to leave the house? I said. You never even leave the basement. Be that as it may, he said. Anything could happen. There could be an emergency. This is an emergency, I said. Oh, I need some money too. I don't have any on me, he said. I meant to go to the bank, but I never made it over. So there it was. My first illicit rendezvous foiled. Because remember, this was back when you couldn't just walk up to a machine and ask it for money. You had to know people. Then I remembered the box. I ran to my room and dug out the tin. It was a tzedakah box with a Star of David, a map of Israel, and a caption. Contribute to the Jewish National Fund. Redeem the land of Israel. And it was heavy and bloated with cash. Truth is, I didn't give a crap about Israel or even about Hebrew school. I was only concerned with putting an end to the Jew-on-Jew violence that occurred every time I went to the bathroom when this thug, Steve Pessin, would assault me when my dick was out in the middle of a Jewy pee. The teacher said the money was for planting trees in Israel. Though why Israel needed trees or why they needed my money to plant them wasn't something I ever understood. Don't trees just grow places? Besides, trees are so abstract, so far in the future. But the thought of everything this money could achieve tonight was undeniable. Before I knew it, I was sporting an erection. Because this was back when it was like that, when it could happen anywhere, when they called it popping a boner, because back then it was more or less a thing that popped and stayed popped until something was done about it. Short on time, I had no choice but to commit two sins simultaneously: embezzling from my Zionist homeland while scattering my Hebraic seed. But the box was a little steel fortress. Getting at the cash was not that simple. First, I worked the coin slot, mangling it with a ballpoint, all the while squeezing the life out of my dick. But the box was unpriable. These fuckers really wanted their trees. Turning the clattering tin over in my hands, I realized the error of my ways. Entry was not to be had by force, but by ingenuity. I had simply to pry up the exit flap and coax the deadbolt back into its housing with a flathead screwdriver, just like that. And as all that charity tumbled down over my tumescent junk, I came. And with that subpar cum shot, I annihilated at once a sylvan countryside and an entire civilization of microscopic Jews. Next thing I know, I'm parked in Sol's driveway, beeping my horn. Nice car, she said, hopping in. It's my dad's. Anyway, you look nice, I said, without actually looking. Yeah, right, she said. Let's just not talk about it. Backing up, I turned and saw her cheek was bruised. There was some swelling about her blackened eyes. Sol, what happened? Nothing, she said. Seriously, you should put some ice on that. Seriously, it's not important. If you say so. Where do you want to go? Elsie's? Pizza Pad? Just drive, Steve. Just fucking drive.
Holy cow! What a story, and what a turn at the end. It's really quite remarkable. It's like I was thinking to myself, this is the kind of thing, and Steve just took it to the next level. I think this would have been very hard to pull off in person, but he is allowing adversity to be the mother of invention. He's got like a whole soundboard that he was working. It's like something off of This American Life, except it's sort of an offshoot of This American Life called This Horny Jewish American Life. I think I speak for all of us when I say that I'm waiting for that to happen. And I am almost certain that, until the end, I was certain that Soledad had a waterbed. But what's amazing about this story, I mean, it's funny as can be, and Steve obviously is, having a lot of fun, but it really takes a turn at the end in the same way, I guess, that Sara's did, in the sense that something that we had taken to be kind of the comic Portnoy-esque, misadventures of a young horny guy suddenly really runs into a very frightening reality, and I just did not see that coming in the best sort of way. I felt really knocked back in my seat. Sometimes humor has that effect of, in a way, kind of, we lower our defenses. Oh, he's just telling a story about being a horny young guy, but in fact, it's a deeper and more upsetting story than that in the end. I thought it was great, Steve. I'm so glad you really went with it and gave us that wonderful sound production. Rachel, I am a tremble at how many decimals you will give us. What did you think?
I know, I'm adding decimals as we speak, just for
I knew it.
I mean, wow. Okay. I want to say to start that music was awesome, and talk about catering to the times, like Steve said, right? And bringing that in. I mean, hello, this was the perfect moment to do that. So I thought that was done so well. And I had never really heard of a tzedakah box being destroyed in such detail before, although I had seen it, sadly. So that was pretty fun to hear. Really, I loved the ending where you showed sort of the beauty, I think, of youth, where you think you understand, you think you know what's going to happen, but then you don't, right? And I love seeing that in the story. I think that you really laid that there. And okay, all I have to say is lighter ice pick and can of Aquanet. That's quite a threesome there. I was not expecting. So since we're going for precision of judging, I'm going to offer you up an 8.625.
We are not being let down. We are not being let down, folks. Eventually, we're going to get to pie. I know it. All right. Awesome. Ginny, what did you think? Speaking of pies, do you see what I did there? Okay.
That was good. Never happened before.
I know. Yeah. I figured the first time.
Yeah. Wow. Steve, what a crazy, brave story. And I found myself starting to think, you really have a voice here of a narrator. And I started to think, could you write a longer piece? Could you write a novel in this voice? Maybe. So that's a really good sign that right from the start, you threw us in to his mind, maybe your mind, I don't know, but that character's mind, and that setting and his concerns, which are mostly below his belt, which is appropriate to his age and who he is. And, you walk this fine line between, particularly in this moment of political correctness, where I was like, oh, don't go there. Don't offend too much. Don't overdo it too much. But you had humor. And in this presentation, you had the really great sound effects, which were just a hoot. And I have no idea how you pulled that off without missing a beat while reading. And so well done. But you got into the mind of that kid, and that is really well done. And the sense of humor came across. And as Steve mentioned, you to work it around to being a more serious story at the end really was important. So I think that really elevated the story a lot. And so where's my card here? Hang on, I didn't get to make my final number here. I'm going to call it a 9.2.
Awesome.
Thank you, Steve. Really enjoyed it.
Awesome. What did you think, Randy?
First of all, I really appreciated the, I don't know if I'm on speaker view or not, but I want to say to you, Steve.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Yeah. You're not coming to my house, baby. You stay away from this. Bought it for my grandchild to teach him about charity. Forget that. The word popped will never be the same to me again. That's good. That word is now gone. I thought you did a really great job. It was very Portnoy-esque, and you replaced liver with a tzedakah box. And whoever thought that could be done? So kudos for that. You had really great word pictures. You really do that very well. You had the curly phone cord, the breasts levitating. I gotta say, that will forever be in my mind. And I think that was a little Seinfeld-esque too. When the father says anything could happen, that is a fantastic capture of a Jewish father or mother. I can say, as a Jewish mother, anything can happen. And forget that the tzedakah box induced the fun. The fact that the character steals from the tzedakah box for the fun, you gotta love that. You really do. And the throwing in of having no idea who this woman really was, obviously, who this girl really was as Steve said, a great way to then pop us back out of what could have been going maybe too far. Although I didn't mind that so much, but it took it into an empathic moment that was unexpected, and unexpected is always good. So 9.3.
Awesome. 9.3. Okay. So again, I think I like the rest of you, am feeling a little bit of decimal point envy, but I like that the other judges are resisting that urge to start extending out the numbers. Great job, guys. Great job, Steve. So we've reached our halfway point, which is the point is designated for me to woefully mispronounce the next storyteller's name. So I apologize in advance, and please correct me if I get your name wrong. But let's welcome our next storyteller, Shazia Khan. Shazia, if that is not how your name is pronounced, please make sure you correct the record on that, and welcome.
Thank you. My name is pronounced Shazia Khan.
Perfect.
And that's fine. It's a difficult name. People often get it wrong. I guess I'll get started. This is going to be a little longer than 5 minutes, so please bear with me. Here we go. I arranged the covers around me more snugly against the autumn chill in my cozy apartment. The best one in my building, the landlady, Mrs. House, always said. Indeed it was, I thought, as I drifted off to the intense smell of something spicy and sweet and dreamt of somebody brewing coffee. The giant pot of water bubbled furiously. There. Now it turned pinkish brown and fumes rose up, up, and up. I woke with a start to the jangling of something. Too loud. It was coming from my bedside table. My old lost alarm clock was somehow unlost. I really needed to sleep better to stop feeling confused in the morning. Being clear and decisive, that's what you need. I mimicked Mrs. House. I realized I would have to decide about this apartment soon. The apartments were being converted to condos. I needed to tell Mrs. House if I wanted to buy or rent long-term for 3 years or leave soon. I had no idea what I wanted, but Mrs. House had asked for a clear choice in her precise manner. I entered the office cautiously. I wasn't sure why I hadn't been summoned by the big boss and mini boss. The two of them usually ignored me and my ideas completely. To my intense surprise, the two were smiling. It seemed like mini boss had liked my new idea and pitched it to big boss to make it into a project, and they wanted a short presentation tomorrow. The odd thing was, I didn't remember sharing my new idea. Probably overheard me at the meeting yesterday and assumed it was up for discussion. That was probably it. I woke up the next morning with a headache and feeling tired. Ate some fresh cinnamon toast and popped a Tylenol for good measure. The day was strange. Mini boss completely ignored me like the bad old days, answered my questions stiffly or looked puzzled, and I had no presentation listed. I felt tired and my head felt stuffy. Maybe I was getting that cold after all. The Tylenol and Allegra could only do so much. I met Mrs. House on my way in. I mumbled when she asked me about the apartment. Be clear, she said as she floated away. I trudged up the stairs. A pleasant surprise awaited me, however. A box of home-baked goodies in a box with my name on it. It was probably from Wanda, my neighbor who made custom treats for parties and generously shared extras with the neighbors. I knocked on her door, no response. She was out then. I'd thank her later. The box revealed savory cheesy scones, cinnamon buns, and pumpkin bread, and made for a hearty dinner. As I walked in the office the next day, I was greeted with a huge smile by Mini Boss, who proceeded to invite me to a pre-meeting with him, followed by a flawless meeting with Big Boss. The next few days were strange. Mini Boss oscillated between being indifferent to me and increasingly friendly. What a moody guy. I felt confused and forgetful a lot these days. My alarm clock kept popping up different places in the house, and I kept discovering old sweaters which I thought I had discarded, or kept finding new books I had wanted to read but had no recollection of buying. Luckily, I still kept finding treats from Wanda outside my door. She was never at home though when I knocked. The allergies this year were wearing havoc. I had a background headache almost constantly and ate Allegra like candy. It didn't help with the confused feeling though. I missed 2 appointments with Mrs. House to talk about the apartment and was given a serious ultimatum to meet her that Sunday at 4 p.m. sharp, else she would assume I was leaving. Clarity of the thought, my dear, she said, shaking her head. The mixture bubbled as the spices went in. Time to let it cool now. The buns were ready to and could be iced soon. A few days later, I finally saw Wanda. As I thanked her and offered to bring over some chicken soup that night, she seemed surprised, welcomed the soup, but said she had been away a fortnight and not made the treats. I wonder who had left me the goodies. They were delicious. They had my name on them, but I still felt a little uneasy. Had I signed up for something and forgotten? Was it another neighbor? Benny from upstairs? Nah, he never cooked. He lived on cereal. Mr. Z only ate salads. Could it be that strange little lady on the first floor? Maybe she was making an effort after all the confusion in the summer. She had requested me to move into her current apartment while she took this one. I flatly refused. This apartment had good light and a good view. I did not want the dingy one just below it. After that, Mrs. Fogg had shot me angry looks whenever she saw me, while I got used to ignoring her. Mrs. Fogg, how nice to see you, I said, trying to sound sincere that evening when I saw her. By the way, those cinnamon buns smell lovely, Mrs. Fogg. I would love a recipe, I said to test my guess. Hello, my dear, she huffed and almost started running towards her apartment. Oh, I never bake. I mean, I hate all spices. I don't have any. Good night then. So mumbling, she fell into her apartment and banged the door shut. Was she avoiding me? Maybe it was just too awkward or she still hated me. Bubble, bubble, pop, pop. Just one more day and then the moonlight streamed through the window. I woke up feeling groggy to look out at a foggy morning. Well, feeling foggy on a foggy morning, fog, grog, fog, I sang in my head. Actually, my head did not feel so heavy today. Something came to me clearly then. Suddenly, there was a pattern to this confusion. It was two versions. There were only two kinds of days. The days followed from each other, just not continuously, but in two parallel streams. I was moving between two worlds. Whether both were real or at least one was an illusion, I didn't know. I walked to the kitchen hungry. A now cold cinnamon bun sat there on a plate. I picked it up gingerly and trashed it. I was done with cinnamon for a while. I warmed some milk and added some coffee powder to it. I had to take charge without fearing consequences. I started writing furiously. Differences, office. I have an idea I'm trying to work on. Or I shared the idea without fear. Boss ignores me or wants to work with me. I feel a little unsure or anything is possible. Same, confused, not sure how people around me will behave. Can't remember things clearly. What else? I looked out the window. Fall colors, beautiful. Distractingly beautiful. Fog, mist, coffee. Fall treats. Gotta love them. Treats? Too many treats. Cinnamon? Too much cinnamon? Fog, fog. Mrs. Fogg. It was her for sure. I knocked loudly. Mrs. Fogg opened the door, looking surprised, then scared, then defiant. Thank you for the baked goods, I said to her and barged into the apartment. It was like a spice bazaar. Cinnamon, nutmeg, thyme, basil. Spices hung from every possible nook and corner. They smelled lovely. I felt almost intoxicated, sleepy, foggy. I shook my head. Why did you give me the goodies, Mrs. Fogg? What did you put in them? Sleeping medicine? What did you do? She said suddenly and started crying and collapsed into a chair. This I did not expect. She sobbed. My sister, recipe, moonlight, cinnamon, cinnamon, she murmured. Just tell me, Mrs. Fogg, I said gently. I was tired. She looked frail and scared, and I could not be angry. The story came out then. She was an aspiring witch. Her sister had been the talented one and helped her bake and cook. They had run a baked goods shop, the Sweet and Spice, for many years, till the sister had disappeared suddenly, leaving behind only her recipe book. Mrs. Fogg never had quite the magic in her. This building was supposed to get the right angle of the sun and moon, which a less talented one such as her needed. She had moved here after her sister vanished, but couldn't get things right. Last summer, she realized that being in the apartment above was what she needed. So I tried to confuse you so Mrs. House would hate you and I could get your apartment, she sobbed. You could have just told me, Mrs. Fogg, instead of giving me sleep medicine and buns, I said. It was funny and a little weird. Oh no, it's not sleep medicine. It opens a portal, to an alternate universe, as per wishes, dreams. I just wanted to send you there for a few days, but you kept coming back. So you see, it was real, just not this world. I had to give you cinnamon cooked a certain way each day, but wait, I'd been in a parallel universe? Okay, Mrs. Fogg, the apartment is yours. No more cinnamon for me, okay? Will I ever be okay? She nodded and pointed to some tea. Drink that. It'll stop you going there. If you want to stop going there, she added. The sun had set a while ago, transforming the sky from turquoise to indigo. Little stars began to twinkle down at me. Correction, a mix of stars and planets, different worlds, worlds seen and unseen. I raised my tea mug to the moon. Tea made by Mrs. Fogg. It tasted bittersweet. Bittersweet is how I felt this evening. So many choices and so many paths that I could take, and I walked these. I didn't need that parallel world. I am me because I walked this way. I am extraordinarily ordinary in a unique way.
Awesome.
You?
So that is it was fascinating to listen to. I was trying to figure out how it all fit together, all those details. So why is Shazia including all of these details about the apartment house and the dingy room? And then it snapped into place like O. Henry or maybe Poe. I was like, oh, I get it. The wonderfully named Mrs. Fogg, worthy of Dickens. Fantastic. What a fascinating story. What do you think, judges? Let's go to Ginny. What did you think of this? She took it seriously. This is a hex story. A hex was placed upon her. Ginny, what did you think?
I'm here. I really enjoyed that, and I admired it as a complete short story. That was a full, complete short story, and you did really well with it. Good world that you created. Mrs. Fogg's a great character, and your final line is terrific. 9.4.
Wow, look at that. Fantastic. Big number. Okay. Randy, what did you think? Oops, unmute yourself there if you can.
I'm sorry, Steve. Even witches have sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
So God bless. Isn't that the truth? It all comes down to that, no matter if you're a dictator or a witch. Life is expressed by food. My agent once said to me, nobody writes food like you do. But Ms. Khan, I think you write food. You do.
Thank you so much.
I mean, food and the fog lifting, beautiful job. And for you, an 8.9. Thank you so much.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, Rachel, what do you think?
So I thought it was beautiful, and I know we're running short on time, so I'm going to keep moving. I loved Moonlight Scream Through the Window, Big Boss, Mini Boss, and Mrs. Fogg. Loved all those lines. They're going to be here for a long time. I'm giving you an 8.625.
8.625.
Amazing.
Okay, all right, fantastic. I will let the storytellers know just keeping mindful of the clock to, if you can, keep your stories to 5 minutes or in the neighborhood of 5 minutes. We're not going to hit you with a ding or a gong, but just in deference to people, wanting to probably move on to the next part of their night, which hopefully involves a cinnamon bun or perhaps a masturbatory ritual involving a charity box. Whatever is your thing for Saturday night, we want you to move on to it. But let's welcome our next storyteller, Deborah Pollock. Where are you, Deborah? Are you here for us?
I'm here.
Awesome.
Okay, you can see me? Okay. When I get dragged along to my mom's friend's master's degree celebration, I have a sliver of hope that I'll get something out of the deal. I hope the graduate's younger brother, Jimmy, will be there. I want to see his face, his eyes. And maybe, if I'm lucky, he'll smile and say hello. And I'll blush and smile back and instantly die of adolescent lust and embarrassment. But I'll die happy. So we arrive at the graduate's home and head back to the backyard. Jimmy welcomes us warmly, and he remembers me. He calls me by my name. You see, I had met Jimmy months earlier. He was an upperclassman at Bowling Green State University, where my brother was in his first year. As a 15-year-old spending the weekend visiting my brother at college in his all-male dorm, I encountered a smorgasbord of newly minted adult men. and I was mostly underwhelmed. There was Danny's roommate, an aspiring G-man with cold, dead eyes, who had posters of his hero, Oliver North, above his bed. There were the doofuses who spent all their time gossiping about days of our lives rather than living their own lives. There was the creep who plied me with cheap beer and tried to convince me I needed a back massage. Ew. But then there was Jimmy. It turned out my mom's friend's younger brother lived in Danny's dorm. He introduced himself like I was someone he was happy to meet. He made eye contact and his eyes stayed on my face. And while my brother and his freshman cohort were sporting caterpillar mustaches and hadn't yet shed their awkward discomfort around females, Jimmy was a man, confident, comfortable in his own flawless skin. Of course, I was smitten. I crushed out on the regular on unattainable men like Rob Lowe, Theo from The Cosby Show, and John Cusack, as any respectable adolescent girl would. Jimmy was different because he was there, real and in the flesh. But he was the same in that he was perfectly out of reach. He saw me as the kid I was, despite my hourglass figure, and yet he was legit amiable and genuinely happy to meet me, like I was a worthwhile human. The teen boys I was used to viewed me and treated me one of three ways, like a shy nerd to get test answers from, like a hot bod to ogle, or like a non-entity. And for the record, the third category was my preference. Back to the party. So the backyard is full of Michelle and Jimmy's extended family and Michelle's friends, all of whom seem to know each other, and county social workers, all of whom know my mom and instantly pull her into conversation. There aren't any kids, certainly no teens, and Mom and I are the only white people there. This isn't unusual particularly, but since I don't know anyone and I'm painfully shy, I feel like my pasty skin and dirty blonde hair are a big neon sign flashing pathetic. I devise a plan to nurse my burger, chips, and lemonade for as long as humanly possible and then go back for more. I need something to pretend to be occupied by. But Jimmy sees me alone and he comes to my rescue. He ditches his family and finds the two of us a spot to sit and chats me up for quite a long time, which is a feat. I am so awestruck, I struggle to form coherent thoughts. He takes the lead, asks me about getting my driver's license, what movies I've seen recently, if I'm a basketball fan. The words aren't sticking in my brain. What's sticking is that big warm smile and those dreamy eyes and those sinewy glistening biceps. I am baking in the sun with the full attention of a charming Adonis. I am overheated in a couple of ways and also deeply appreciative of this kind man's effort to make me feel comfortable. Eventually, my mom is ready to go and we agree to do a bathroom run before heading to the car. She goes, I go, uneventful, or so I think. Michelle and Jimmy are impeccable hosts and meet us at the front door to say goodbye. He smiles that dazzling smile and reaches out and embraces me. I feel his skin against my skin and our sweat mingling. I can smell him. I'm spellbound. The hug is platonic, brotherly even. That's what's so exquisite. My perfectly unattainable heartthrob is touching me chastely, yet turning me on and giving me glorious fantasy fodder. As Jimmy and I pull away from each other, I step across the threshold onto the front stoop. I feel something strange on my foot. I look down. We all look down. And time stops. I'm wearing open-toed sandals, and there is a very large horseshoe affixed to the front of my sole. But it's not a horseshoe. It's a very large, semi-curled, used maxi pad, and its adhesive strip is stuck to the front of my shoe. To clarify, I don't have my period. It's not mine, people. Someone else's discarded maxi pad is hanging off my foot. I have no idea how it got there, and I didn't feel it until this very moment, but there it is, a giant red and white curse. I have choices, all of them devastating. Scream and call even more attention to my scarlet letter, drag my bloody albatross across their living room carpeting, trying to make my way to the bathroom, pull it off my shoe and toss it into the bushes. I'd have to dive into the bushes myself afterwards. I take off, trying to run, but accomplishing more of a limpy gallop down the stairs and driveway and across the street. Between sunburn and humiliation, I'm redder than the bloody pad. I limp gallop around my mom's Corolla, duck down on the far side as if that's gonna help, like a toddler who covers her eyes and believes you can't see her. Hiding doesn't make me magically disappear or spontaneously burst into flames. For the record, Option 2 would have been my preferred method of annihilation at that moment. Instead, I have to wait for my mom to amble down the stairs, make her way down the driveway and across the street, get in the car, lean over, and unlock the passenger door. I slink inside, eyes lowered. Mom puts the car in gear, and we drive away.
Oh my God. Fantastic. Holy cow. I have choices, all of them devastating. Such a great line. Such a beautifully narrated piece, you know. So much is going on here, Deborah, but like you're really good at guiding the reader, and it's such a tricky thing to do. I love that when you go back to the party. And I just love, again, we talked about these declaratives, but that line, I can smell him. It's just like, oh, thank you for that. Such an awesome story. Of course, all of us have been there. What did you think, Randy? What do you have to say to this young lady?
I'm not even going to share my own stories. All I can say is well done. The detail that I loved the best was the Oliver North hero poster on the wall. I mean, that tells you everything. You don't know one thing. Somehow this story had the Stephen King's gotta know. I had a gotta know right from the beginning, and I didn't know why. And damn if it didn't pay off, girl. So, yikes, a 9.4.
Wow, fantastic. 9.4. Some Weisenheimer, Andrea said, well done, period. Okay, we see you, Andrea. We see what you did. What do you think, Jenny? Oh, just unmute yourself if you would.
Yep, there we go. Wow, what an ending to that story. That was great. Also, you just really captured the whole setting, and your descriptions of the boys were great. Really surprising, shocking. Don't want to be that girl. 8.75. Thank you.
8.75.
Really well done.
All right, awesome. Rachel, you got some company in that third decimal point.
I love it. Okay, I love that, Deborah. That was so funny. Caterpillar mustache. I'm like underwhelmed by the college guys. And bloody albatross. Oh my God. That was awesome. 9.5.
9.5. You have sufficiently devastated Rachel that she can only sum it up with 2 decimal points. Fantastic. Great job, Deborah. What a wonderful story. Let's move on. We're going to move on to our penultimate storyteller, he said pretentiously. Please welcome Mr. Scott Widener. Where are you, Scott?
There he is. Hi. Am I in full view, or I mean in speaker view?
Yes, you're in speaker view.
Oh, okay. So you can hear me?
We can both hear you and see you, and what we want to hear is your story.
Okay. So this is called 6 Degrees. So back in high school, I had this classmate named Guy Wiggins. And it seemed like I would run into Guy everywhere outside of high school. Restaurants, movie theaters, concerts, sporting events. And, you know, I had nothing against the guy, but, you know, I was getting kind of annoyed at running into him everywhere. He was kind of like a bad penny, or like he was stalking me or something. One night, for example, I was at a Benny Goodman concert at Lincoln Center. I was heavily into big band music, and I played the clarinet. And while everybody else my age was listening to Led Zeppelin, I was listening to Benny Goodman. So I didn't expect to run anybody at the Benny Goodman concert. So at intermission, I'm looking up and someone up on the balcony is waving at me. Who is it? Guy Wiggins. Oh, well, the next day he told me he was into big band music too. Then at summer camp, one summer, I went to summer camp, sleepaway camp in Lakeville, Connecticut, a place called Camp Sloan. And I'm in the mess hall one day eating, and I look up and somebody's waving at me. Who is it? Guy Wiggins. I could not believe it. So when I finally got to college, I thought, okay, I've shaken Guy, okay, because he did not go to my college. I went to Vassar, he went to Brown. Well, one day I'm walking down the path in the quad. Who do I run into? Guy Wiggins. It turned out he was visiting somebody else at college who was also a high school classmate. So that's why he was there. After college, a few years go by, and I joined this health club down in the village. And I'm on the stationary bike, and somebody taps me on the shoulder. I turn around. Who is it? Guy Wiggins. I could not believe it. It was like unbelievable. He was following me everywhere. A couple of years pass. I have a job at the Metropolitan Opera, serving wine and champagne during intermissions, the kind of job you do in your 20s, you know. So after my shift one night, I had turned in my cash, from the cash register, and I was heading to the elevator and waiting for the elevator. Who is it? Guy Wiggins. It turns out he was in the wine business, the family wine business, selling wine to the Metropolitan Opera. Unbelievable. So we talked, we caught up. I said, okay, goodbye, see you later. A couple of years pass. I go on this bicycle trip through the Canadian Rockies from Vancouver to Calgary. It was beautiful. And I was with a bunch of other bicyclists. And so we're in the general store in Lake Louise, which is a beautiful place. And we're getting supplies. And I'm picking supplies off the shelf. And I turn around. Who is it? No, it's Justin Ralph. Justin Ralph was like the class toughie, some guy you did not want to mess with. And we were like, what the hell? He was like, what are you doing here? I said, I'm on a bicycle trip with these guys. We're going through the Rockies. I said, what are you doing here? He said, oh, I'm just roughing it by myself, He looked like Grizzly Adams, So anyway, he's like, this is unbelievable. And I said, yeah, but you know what? He said, what? I said, I'm sure glad you're not Guy Wiggins. And he looked at me quizzically.
All right, awesome. That was the ultimate Shaggy Dog story. You Justin Ralphed us. This is a story in which it proves that there's a very pleasing human pattern, that humans really like pattern and repetition and dependability. Because in a strange and ineluctable way, I was really looking forward to the next appearance of Guy Wiggins. I think we tend to say that, oh, well, the unexpected is what surprises us, but the expected actually also pleases us, even if it annoyed you. I just really was very happy every time Guy Wiggins appeared. I don't know why. I know you weren't, but I was. Maybe that's why I was pleased. All right, judges, let's see what you thought. I should probably reveal that all of these judges' legal names are Guy Wiggins before we get started. Virginia Pie, Guy Wiggins, what did you think? Oh, just unmute yourself if you would, Jenny.
Yeah. Well, that really was a Shaggy Dog story, and the tension was building. And I don't know if you'll want to take a minute, Scott, and take a look at the chat, but we were all saying Guy Wiggins. We were saying it with you. We were just, so primed. So you had us in your pocket, which is a great sign in a story. Well done. 8.75.
8.75. Fantastic. Rachel, what did you think?
I think what I loved is that you took us through a life, right? From, early on high school all the way through to this bike trip, right? We saw all these scenes, and of course we know we know who's coming. Guy Wiggins is coming, but you took us through the life and did it so well. So awesome. 8625.
8625. Fantastic. Randy, Susan, Mayer, Guy Wiggins, what did you think?
You gave us a different kind of albatross, Scott. We went from, I just felt like Guy Wiggins was looking over my shoulder every second. And that was a really good surprise to know that instead we were going to, I don't even remember the name of the last guy. All I remember is Guy Wiggins.
That's it. He put a hex on you.
He put a hex on me. I'm going to go the Rachel route and do 8.55.
8.55. I hope people are recognizing the kind of precision judging that's happening here. At a normal event that wasn't virtual, people just whatever, 8, 9. I don't even know if they go to a first decimal point. But consistently, our judges are becoming more and more ornate as they fall under the aegis of our Belmont Books hex here. All right, last storyteller of the evening. Time flies when you're having fun. Please welcome to the Belmont Books Story Slam Virtual Edition, Guy Wig. No, I'm not going to do that. Kathy Pemberton, please do everybody else mute if you would, and go on to speaker view, and let's hear what Kathy Wiggins has to say to us this evening. Kathy, the floor is yours. Oops, I hope you're there. Is Kathy here? Bueller, Fry. I saw her earlier, and I'm going to go ahead and suppose maybe that Kathy isn't here because I'm not seeing her in our search here in the participants. So that means we are already at the end of our storytellers. We were kind of left with a hanging Chad there, or a hanging Kathy anyway. And so I want to do a couple of things. I want to make sure that Stacy can add up the scores and let us know. Or maybe she'll want to pop on again, or if you want, you can put in the chat, Kathy, who won, who got the highest score. Remember, the winning story here. Everybody's a winner for telling a story, frankly, but the actual, by the official scores, winner will get, I think, a $25 gift certificate for the cafe, the Black Bear Cafe, which is doing curbside service, I think, and maybe it's a $25 gift certificate for Belmont Books. It could be that. Stacy will let me know that, but I know it's $25 is involved, and I also know that we're just stalling a little bit to see if Kathy shows up, but I think she might have popped out of the event. Before we do that, I want to put in the chat one thing, which is some of you contributed to a candidate or cause because you were forced essentially to accept my book, Bad Stories. I've also been doing these things called Workshops for Democracy, which are just writing workshops where people are asked, rather than they pay a small nominal fee to the hosting organization, and then they're asked to make a contribution to whatever candidate or cause they support. And it's just a writing workshop with a little bit of civic involvement happening. So I'm putting in the chat for everyone the link to the last of these Workshops for Democracy, which is a workshop about the comic impulse and writing funny stuff, which a lot of people did this evening. So you guys could co-teach the class as far as I'm concerned. But it will be on Monday evening, and I put a link to that in the chat in case people want to. I don't know. I'm compulsively contributing to people now because that's where I am in my head. This is a way to do that and support a candidate or cause you support, but also to get a writing workshop out of it of dubious value. So that's in the chat. And I'm going to ask that Stacy let us know, or maybe that you pop back onto the screen and let us know who won tonight's Story Slam. And then it would be lovely if everybody unmuted and just gave all the storytellers and our amazing judges a round of applause. That would certainly be a wonderful, gracious thing to do before we say goodnight for the rest of the evening. So once again, Stacy, if you're listening to my voice, it would be great if we figured out who won, so I don't have to keep filibustering like a Republican senator. All right, awesome, thank you.
So you all did such a wonderful job, and it was actually pretty close, but our grand winner of the slam is Sarah's sweet Rabidoux-Kelsey. Congratulations.
Wow. Awesome. So if everybody will unmute just for a second, just so we can give a round of applause to everybody, all the storytellers. You're all allowed. I'm going to unmute you all. Everybody, all the participants are allowed to clap if they want. Awesome. And thanks again to our amazing judges. Please, if you would, support a local bookstore, local indie, our favorite local indie, Belmont Books. And it would be great if you wanted to do that. You will increase the pleasure of your somewhat anxiety-ridden quarantine, I promise you, if you buy the books by any of our wonderful judges, and especially if you buy them from Belmont Books, that would be a mitzvah. You could break open your little Zionist tin can. And thanks again to everybody for being there. And we'll hopefully do another one of these at some point down the line. And thanks again to Stacy and all the guys at Belmont Books. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Judges,
you.
thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for coming. And storytellers, really appreciate it. You all did a great job. Have a
Thank
great
you.
night and be safe.
Bye-bye.